Welcome to the Fatal Vision podcast, our first recording in the month of May 2025. What is this, episode 25, Billy?
Oh, I
Is
forget.
that where we're at? I think we're a quarter century in.
Yeah, yeah, wait, let me see. Episodes. I'm in episode 25.
Yeah, big day, big day. And I know that we've been away. We've been away. We've been asleep at the wheel.
Yeah, what have you been up to, man?
Nothing much, just bullshit, the usual things. We did record a couple weeks ago.
Gene
Well, we talked.
Weingarten.
Well, no, but yeah, obviously we felt like we had to let Gene just sort of sit there and marinate as a victorious moment
Yeah.
for us. It was one of the ultimate wins. And then we almost recorded 2 weeks ago, but we didn't get on till around this time. We didn't get any time to chat. Chatting is pretty crucial for us. Um, and then last week was just a write-off. I was playing D&D, so I'll just own up to that.
Yeah.
But hey,
I
but
was
this
I
that's
was
why
ready.
that's why we're recording on a Tuesday. So we're making up for it.
Yeah,
We're gonna get it out a whole day.
people are gonna flip out when they see it hit their box tomorrow.
The first when you first roll out of the first, you first wipe the sleep from your eyes and you can't even see straight, and then your phone comes into focus and you see that AI generated logo come on saying a new Fatal Vision podcast has been hit published. You'll feel that nothing but adrenaline through your whole system. And that'll be what it's all about.
Quite fitting because we're spending tonight with the voice of Jeff.
Yeah, we're gonna see
Jeff's
how far we
Jeff's a
can
guy that
go.
had a lot of adrenaline.
He's the ultimate. Oh yeah, and I'll just share my what I've been up to. Also, is
Sure, please.
I listened to this chapter on the audiobook 2 weeks ago, and then today I'm on the last chapter of the book. So I just ended up just listening straight through all the
Oh,
way till the end through everything. So. I imagine someday, like you run into someone who's like, yeah, I read one book, I read the Bible, and I enjoy it immensely. And that's just sort of where I'm at with Fatal Vision right now, as I should be, as one of the stewards of the living, breathing text, along with you.
yeah, yeah. And
Yeah,
James, I was very happy to hear about your best friend from childhood called you up and
yeah. He very, very. Yeah, his name's
what
Matt.
Matt.
I
Hey
hope.
Matt.
Hey, Matt. We hope you were listening. We hope you made it to this far. It sounded like you were on quite a clip, and yeah, he called me and he made this very earnest appraisal of what a beautiful podcast we had, and it was all very sincere. He wasn't saying anything nasty, like I'm withholding judgment. I'm only listening to it because it's you. Um, he said it was better than an audiobook. It's the highest praise I've received from anybody, and I didn't even push it on him.
How
You
did he
know,
feel about the level of banter?
he thought the banter was glorious, utterly
Oh,
glorious. He thought that we
okay.
had a great chemistry, and he said, "Fuck that person who
No,
said they
no,
didn't like that banter."
no,
What?
no.
What?
What
That's what
did
he
she?
said.
Oh, you're just quoting him. Okay.
Yeah. And we know for a fact the person that we're talking about doesn't listen. She wrote it. Remember, like Dottie was trying to talk her into listening to it again, and she's like, "It's too political. I don't like the banter. I like my podcasts that are just cold, hard facts." And I think we had to like sort of jump in and say and be like, "Look, it's not for you. Billy and I are extremely polarizing figures,
I
and
wish her nothing but the best. I want to be
yeah,
clear about that. Her
we
devotion
don't."
to this case
Yeah,
means
anybody
a
who sits
lot.
in that Facebook group talking about the case is better than 99.99% of the population of the United States
Yeah, I love
because they
her.
care about things that matter.
Yeah, I love her. I love her.
So yeah, I just have a friend who is very loyal and he's a very big fan of the. It's the same way you would respond, I'm sure, Billy, if someone said, "I don't like something Bruce Springsteen said on his new album." or his new outtakes.
Yeah.
And and you knew it was just some like you know
Mm.
some fair weather fan who's like, yep, born to want run to Tunnel of Love, and then it's just all about going to see the shows, hitting the piss and shipbreaks every time he plays a new song. You would probably say fuck that guy because you're a loyal fan and you feel
Yeah.
attached to your art. So
Yeah.
we
I think the worst part about the negative feedback about the banter was that when we tried to respond, she didn't respond to us.
no, she would only respond to she was talking past us.
She continued she continued
Yeah.
talking about us.
About us. Yeah, she was so hard. She was just we're such scum to her. Um, and it's all about politics. Let's not kid ourselves.
Okay, well, if we're talking about reviews, we did get the review on Apple where
Of a lifetime.
we got 5 stars. This
It
guy
what?
said
It,
that,
what
oh, well, you want
you're
to talk?
assuming it's a guy. You're assuming it's a guy.
I don't know. The tone felt very
I
masculine.
assumed it was a girl or a lady.
Oh, okay,
Um,
okay.
but that could be. This just shows you if we were one of McDonald's psychologists,
Hmm.
you'd be able to pull a lot out of that assumption. It's like a Rorschach test.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, you're right.
yeah, no,
Okay, but
we
what
gotta.
did this person say?
They said that our banter, maybe they didn't use the word banter.
No, it was about our,
Our riffs on the voice of Jeffrey MacDonald or Emmy or deserve an Emmy.
yeah, yeah. I love that guy.
And I
I
thought
love
that
that
was
guy.
they really
Girl.
got it. They really, really got it. Like the riffs on Jeffrey, well, actually they said rifts as if we have rifts with each other. So I'm not sure actually that it was praise.
Well,
They finished saying great stuff.
Emmys are a bit of an accolade.
Well, it says no. They're saying obviously they're huge fans, and
They hope we
they
do
say our
100
blind spot
episodes.
is that we relate things to President Trump unnecessarily, which I think is objectively false. I think there was one episode where we talked about McDonald asking literally that person for a presidential pardon, and we had to address that for those reasons.
Well,
And
to be fair, in the first episode where we read a chapter, I did
you
start
said fuck
screaming.
them,
I
but
started screaming,
yeah, well, that was fair. And
but these were also episodes before we even knew anyone would ever listen to us.
or that we'd even publish it. You're
Yeah,
basically hearing this our version of tracks, basically the first 9 episodes, right?
yeah, which a reference to
Oh,
Springsteen
sorry.
outtake.
Yeah, or yeah, I mean,
There's
it's
one episode, James, where we watched the convention.
I still don't believe you when you tell me that's just horrifying. It's
Yeah.
horrifying.
I was hoping Corey would chop that out. So, okay. It is 10:55 on the
Uh,
East. We have to read The Voice of Jeffrey MacDonald. We're gonna
yeah.
just get as far as we can get. I think it's a pretty
Yeah,
good one.
let's yeah, but I always find that when once we're on the Voice of Jeff chapters, it's such a rollicking ride that we it's hard to get off.
What was going on in the last Voice of Jeff chapter?
Ooh, yeah, let's for some context before we dove into the morning of April 6th. Um, he was telling us about how he lied to Colette about he was drafted into the army, or that and then he told this whole story about them going to Aruba. He thinks it was Aruba before they moved to Fort Bragg. Um, describing how uncomfortable she was and her exhaustion and
Yeah.
blah blah blah. And then I
He
was just
was super
listening.
uneasy.
And then if you go to the last chapter of the Fatal Vision where Joe exposes every one of his lies, that was one of them. It's like there was never any trip to anywhere at all. Like she went to Patchogue before he went to training.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Um,
Okay, that
Not,
makes you think. Do you want to take us into the spirit of the text?
yeah, sure. I'll
Okay.
lead us into this, but to thine own self be true. If you feel moved by the Spirit to speak up, you please do,
For
and I'll
those of
try
you at
to.
home, you can actually pause us and say anything you want to anybody around.
Yeah, anybody you want, and you're free to send word to us if you want us to read your letters on the air. You will certainly consider reading them. Definitely will consider it.
All
All right, all
right,
right.
that gets me every time.
It's so good, so good.
We'll
This is the
definitely think about it.
certainly we'll read your emails. I'm not sure we can't promise anything beyond that. Uh, so where do we place this? This is the voice of Jeffrey MacDonald that comes after chapter 9 of part 1, before chapter 10 of part 1.
Okay, go ahead.
So I don't even know where to, we have 5 different editions here. So, all right, Fort Sam Houston became kind of a fun time to my surprise. I thought it would be fairly difficult at first, but it ended that we were assigned to motel rooms rather than barracks, and I met this doctor from Williams College,
Oh my
who's now,
God.
wow,
Holy
wow.
shit. That's where I went.
Do you think that's is Joe masking the guy's identity? I think probably, but I don't know.
Because Joe wrote the book in Williamstown.
Yeah, and
Would
we
be.
know that at least some of these names he changes to protect their but
All right, go
I don't
for
know.
it.
Who knows? It might be. Yeah, anyways, he's now an orthopedic surgeon on Maui, and he and I ended up sort of hanging around together for the 6 weeks of training at Fort Sam Houston. We had a very different lifestyle than I initially thought. We started working out together.
Hmm.
Shocking. Along with a veterinarian whose name I totally forget, which was always been my custom, even through medical school and internship, to try to get some running in at least several times a week and some exercise, occasionally handball or basketball, just
Oh,
crushing it.
he likes to hoop.
Yeah, he's a hoops guy. He played hoops on the last day of on February 16th. Full court basketball
Full
before he came
contact
home.
football.
Yeah, full contact. Yeah, elbows to the face. Fairly early on, they had this sort of careers day where they pull all of us in an auditorium and brought in different specialists from branches of the service and try to get you to sign up. And I remember those mostly turkeys came across the stage and gave their little talk, and there was really nothing very exciting. And then a full colonel, a bird colonel, came out with his green beret on and his dress uniform with jump boots and all his medals over his left chest and his wings on, and he gave about a 2-minute talk. Basically, what he said was, "Well, you guys can just join up and treat a 50-yard long line of malingering GIs who don't want to be there and who hate the war, and half of them just have VD, and the other half don't have anything, or you can spend 2 years doing something really valuable. You can join up, learn how to jump out of planes, become airborne, a paratrooper, and then work with the best troops on Earth, the United States Green Berets." He said, "If you have any guts for that kind of thing, see me." And he walked off the stage.
Interesting that, okay, so Jeff is quoting this guy from memory,
Yeah.
making it very cinematic.
And this is a story he tells, I think, to at least two of the psychologists or psychiatrists that assess him after the murders as like one of the seminal moments of his life. And they use that as sort of like one of the trappings of his like obsession with perfect masculinity.
If you have any guts, like, well,
Well,
we know that you ended up becoming a Green
yeah, so
Beret.
yeah, yeah, and do you want to guess how many other people went?
Oh, let's keep
Practically,
going.
let's find out. Well, this friend from Williams and I, we kind of looked at each other and said, "Jesus, that sounds pretty neat. We never even thought of that."
They said that
And
in
we,
unison.
yeah, just out loud to each other. And we
Jesus, that sounds
both,
pretty neat.
"Jesus, that sounds pretty neat." And we both laughed and said, "Let's go." And needless to say, we were the only two out of about 400 people who went to see him.
Bunch of cowards.
Yeah, bunch of fucking losers. This colonel, Colonel Himba, his first name was Einar. He had escaped, I think, from Germany in World War II. He may have been Norwegian or Swede, but I think he was German, and he escaped during World War II. And he came to the Allied side and ended up going back to medical school in the 40s or 50s and ended up in the Green Berets. I'll pass to you, Bill.
In any case, he was a tall German with a German accent, and he still had this old Prussian way of dealing with officers and men, and we were impressed with him and with the drama and the possibilities of jumping out of planes and being a Green Beret. He's really focused on the jumping out of planes.
Yeah,
He's
he
mentioned it
really wants
twice.
Joe not to miss, like, this is like one of the main characters in my book, in my story. This guy,
Yeah,
Himar.
yeah.
Hema.
This, this really turned both my friend and I. There we go again with the,
They turned my friend and I
yeah.
on.
And we went away, and as I remember, we went out and worked out. I mean, obviously.
Good.
It
Thank
was
God.
about it was about 106 degrees in San Antonio in July, but we ran a couple of miles together. So okay, he's making sure Joe understands. We didn't just go work out. We worked out in
No.
106
Yeah.
degree heat.
Yeah.
Oh, I
This
got it. I
was
got to keep going.
yeah.
Ran a couple miles together and did our chin-ups and push-ups and sit-ups and whatnot, and felt pretty good about the possibility of becoming Green Berets. Okay, so he's telling us what they were both feeling
Mm.
internally while they were working out. And I remember I called Colette later. Let's see how she felt that night or the next day and sort of announced rather than asked that I'd been offered this chance to go airborne and go to paratrooper school and join the Green Berets. And I remember there was a little silence at the other end of the phone. My mom was there at the other end too, I believe. She was with Colette, or Colette came next door to see my mom as soon as I called. In any case, I remember there was a little silence, and then Colette's next question was, well, why in the world would you want to jump out of airplanes and be a Green Beret?
Uh,
We're back to the airplanes.
she
She
actually gets to be she actually gets a quote.
she gets a quote and she
Yeah.
sounds like a total
It's a
simpleton.
total nag. Total nag.
She's repeating back to him verbatim
Yeah.
what he just said to her. Well, why would you want to do the thing you
Yeah.
said? And I must have been a little, excited or up about it, but I was very enthusiastic and told her that they were the best troops in the world. And we'd learn different things as well as doing the medical work. We would learn patrolling and long range reconnaissance and jumping out of airplanes and demolitions and small weapons fire and all this stuff. And I explained to her how instead of
Is he
wait,
gonna jump out of airplane? Is he gonna jump out of airplanes, you think? Is that part of it? All right. Sorry.
I explained to her how. And again, for listeners to this show, one thing we've pieced together, or a theory we have, is that Jeff is trying to write the book for Joe.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff is telling Joe what he wants in the book, thinking that Joe will then render it in his narrative,
Yeah, he's the typer.
journalistic, literary,
He's gonna type it out using words that are commercially acceptable in a published book.
using
But
scenes.
and this is gonna be part of his argument later at lawsuit is, it was my story in his words. That's what he wants here.
Yeah. So it's possible that that Jeff wanted Joe to say something about Jeff's desire to jump out of airplanes.
Yes, yeah, it's maybe turn it into maybe
I
a
really
hundred
can't,
page.
I really can't relate to this at all. I feel kind of emasculated by it. Like I've never had any kind of extreme activity like that. Like even people that want to like go find a cliff and jump into a body of water. I just could never imagine wanting to do that. Like somebody tells me I could jump out of an airplane, I would rather do basically anything.
I'd
So
rather just straight up die on the ground.
I would rather sit on the ground outside.
Yeah. No, agreed. It's hard to relate to when he's making a very strong case against you for feeling that way. Because
Yeah,
like
yeah. He's making it sound like the opportunity to jump out of planes and demolish things and
and
invade
small
worlds.
weapons fire,
Yeah, all this
that's
stuff.
really neat stuff.
Yeah,
Like, why
like
wouldn't Colette immediately get turned on by long range reconnaissance? And keep in mind, this is all happening during like an insanely huge war where like, literally everybody in the military is involved in combat.
yeah, and a
So
lot
it's
of domestic
yeah,
unrest about
yeah.
this very
And you
thing. Oh my God,
I
this is
can't
really
imagine.
neat.
Yeah, this is neat. I'm gonna get to learn how to do long range reconnaissance. What do you mean?
Okay,
Why do I want to do that?
and I
Sorry.
explained to her how instead of wasting 2 years in a sick call line treating not very sick people, this way I had a chance to work with these incredible troops. And if I went to Vietnam, I might even go as a Green Beret physician. So he's like, he's selling his wife on him going to Vietnam.
And he's verbatim, he's using the verbatim, like, well, it was just going to be a bunch of sick call bullshit, just like Hima said. He's just repeating Hima's lines.
Colette was uncomfortable about my becoming a Green Beret, but she also respected me, for making a firm decision. And she sort of, she put her faith and her trust in me. Also, to be honest, this colonel had told us that if we passed the physical test and signed the right papers and were willing to go to airborne school, we could have our orders changed from Vietnam to Fort Benning, Georgia, and we would get orders from Fort Benning, probably to JFK Center at Fort Bragg for Green Beret status. And this was the thing she sort of latched on to, and I then sort of used as the trump card, I guess, that I was being taken off orders for Vietnam. And I then sort of realized how that was the first time that I ever really understood that Colette was upset that I might be going to Vietnam. He's got a really, really
Really, really close relationship.
powerful, empathetic
Yeah.
imagination. It's, I had always been kind of casual about it and a little cavalier, but at that point, that phone call brought me to a realization that Colette, and therefore probably my mom and dad I'm sorry, not my dad, but my mom were upset about me going to Vietnam. I'll
I'm
pass.
so glad he cleared up that his dad's consciousness was extinguished upon the moment of bodily death.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not having any thoughts about anything.
No. Yeah. He's a materialist, MacDonald. He's not a man of the faith, as you know.
Yeah, we should have Ross Douthat on the show to talk about that. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, that would get some stir up some controversy, right? That might get us some hate listens. Um, all right, I'll take it over. So therefore, that became the topic of conversation. Now, this is still the same phone call. That joining the Green Berets was getting me off orders to Vietnam, but that was not at all my intention in joining. As a matter of fact, I fully expected to go to Vietnam as soon as I got the Green Beret.
Just
And
to be
later
clear,
on,
Joe, just to be clear, I
yeah,
wanted to go to Vietnam.
desperately. And I was lying to Colette because I would go as soon as I got the chance. Later on, as a matter of fact, I talked to two of my commanding officers and asked to go to Vietnam on two different occasions, neither of which were fully discussed with Colette.
Partially,
At
though,
the
maybe.
partially, I'm sure there was at least 80% discussed. At the time, it wasn't, I felt, appropriate. Now, in retrospect, of course, that's a decision I probably should have shared a little more widely with her. But I saw it as part duty and part something I wanted to do. How could anybody say this guy was a narcissist? So we were down in Fort Sam, Houston, which was clear and sunny and hot and dry. And we had these few little physical tests. I went and eventually took my test after working out for I think about another week with my friend from Williams, really hard every day. We went and took the test in our fatigues and boots, and we both passed with flying colors.
Wow.
Amazing.
Suction break.
At section break, here we go. We're no longer on the phone with Colette. At Fort Brenning, excuse me, Fort Benning, during my paratroop training, I was proud of working toward earning my wings. And of course, he is loving this stuff. This is like bread and butter for him.
Yeah. You notice when
And
he
of
talks about other shit, it's like, I don't know.
yeah, like he's just sort of, oh, geez, I can't remember. This is all there's rendered in such vivid detail.
If he's
And
talking about being alpha, or if he's
yeah,
talking about the food he ate.
like yeah, then it's incredibly specific. But if he's talking about a murder that happened 6 weeks ago, it's all just a blank. It's like Easy Rider. Uh, and of course, my first jump is something I will never forget. I
Yeah.
remember,
You're gonna
here
get
we
a
go.
detailed description
Here we
of
go. Oh, this is going to be really good, I think. I remember very clearly going out the door. I was definitely, scared, but as I got closer to the door, my fear seemed to decrease. They didn't have to push me. And getting a sense of confusion as the air hit me and you spun around. I remember that the feeling of being tossed and turned was much more than I was prepared for, but I also remember what an incredible rush it was as you looked up and saw your open chute above you. It was sort of like, your heart had stopped for a minute and then started beating again. Relief floods through you, this incredible relief. And next, an exhilaration that you've actually done it. You've jumped. A lot of guys gave out a tremendous whoop as we were heading on down towards the earth. The sky was full of new paratroopers, and you could hear the yells of exhilaration up and down. Guys giving Geronimos and war whoops, and I made it, and even picking up on some of the yells that the instructors had us screaming while we were running all through the airborne school about going to kill some Charlie Kong. I'll never forget that exhilaration. The day after my airborne graduation, I flew out of Fort Benning. I believe I had a couple of days and I flew to New York. I remember how neat it was to get off the plane at JFK and have jump wings on my dress army greens. Still had a regular army hat, officer style hat, but I had little jump wings now. And the casual army hat, the soft army hat, had a different patch on it now because I was airborne. And I remember how neat I felt. Section break. Now, arriving at Fort Bragg, it was actually the best time of year for weather. The fall at Fort Bragg is clear and pretty, the sky is blue, and the pine trees are all nice, and there's lots of green grass that still hasn't turned brown for the winter. And Fort Bragg was the home of the Airborne, the 18th Airborne Corps and the 82nd Airborne, as well as the JFK Center for Special Warfare, the Green Berets. As it was, an elite base with a lot of elite troops, the 82nd Airborne being better than most of the ground troops, and the Green Berets being allegedly the best of all.
gotta be. Gotta be.
Yes.
So if
Slant.
we look back on his life a bit, um,
Yeah, go for it.
he was in Patchogue. Everybody was gonna be like a dental technician.
Or gas station attendant
And he
or
said,
gas
fuck
station
that.
owner.
Fuck that. I'm gonna be a
Yeah.
doctor.
Yeah.
At
I'm gonna be a
Princeton,
doctor.
at Princeton, he's in the number one jock club.
The best shock club was Cosmo Yakovatsi. And then, of course, medical school.
Hmm.
He was with the most feared um evil surgeon and he like pushed him around a little bit.
Yeah, he refused to back down.
Yeah. So it's been a nonstop. breakneck speed of kicking ass, you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah, cool.
well, I think
Except his daughter, he did not think
was no,
she wasn't a very elegant looking baby.
wasn't beautiful. Yeah.
That's what he
Um,
said.
that's what he said.
Yeah.
That's what he said earlier. You can look back. That was a thing.
That's what he said about his slain child. She wasn't cute.
Yeah, that's what he said 9 years later, recording this while he's incarcerated for murdering her.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah,
Wait. I
yeah,
also want to mention
yeah.
when he went into the hospital where Colette was it she was giving birth or had given birth,
He had just given birth to Kristen.
and he like
Sa-
single-handedly saved her
Saved her.
life.
Yeah, because all the attending and the nurses were just letting her bleed out, and
I
he knew
stepped
that she
in.
was. Yeah, he stepped in and basically just saved her life, only to take it later. But
Whoa. All
well,
right.
not. All right. Anyway,
He maintains his innocence, so I think.
yes, that's always worth noting. All right, I want you to take this over if you don't mind, because we're switching to a new tone here, the domestic front.
What line are we at? Moving in?
In addition,
In addition, fairly soon after I got there, I was able to arrange for the housing at 544 Castle Drive, and Freddie drove Colette and the kids down, and we moved into the house. Moving in, moving, I think, is always traumatic, but it went very well. That is a vulnerable statement. I find moving traumatic sometimes.
I do too, and that we've had some traumatic moves with Jeff and Colette already, with the Chicago breakdown
He's
and the
crying in the car, and he hugs her.
yeah, and all the shitty neighborhoods in Chicago, and
Yeah, yeah. Colette was happy to have had some time with Freddie, I think, and the kids were. It was going to be a super setup for us because the school was on post and was good, and we would have no trouble getting babysitters, and we had an income in a reasonable sized house. Each of the kids had their own bedroom. We had our own bedroom. It was officers' quarters, and to us, it was great. Also, being together again, despite the bachelor atmosphere at Fort Sam Houston and a little bit in Fort Benning, it was really nice to be back with Colette and the kids. My job seemed relatively easy and lots of fun. I was getting in a lot of jumps and learning some neat things. I was able to get my workouts in. Right after Thanksgiving, I started working out with the boxing team. Whew,
eh,
love it.
that's not good. That's not good. Not good at all.
And still have this great time to be with the kids and Colette. Also, I was not on orders for Vietnam, and Colette was very relieved about that. Once we were settled, though, I went to see my commanding officer, Colonel Kingston, and told him that I didn't mind going to Vietnam, and that as a matter of fact, I kind of wanted to go. There's also this theme of him doing anything to get away from his family.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, oh, I'm so yeah. So we got there, and it was pretty neat. But I also started working with the boxing team right away, and I wanted to go to Vietnam right away. But it was kind of neat to be with Colette again.
Bob Kingston was the guy who was in charge of the 3rd Special Forces when I first got to Fort Bragg, and he made me his group surgeon 1 or 2 weeks after I arrived. In other words, I was the main doctor under Colonel Kingston. I had heard all the legends about him. He's a guy who was behind the lines in North Korea. He was a raider, and he was behind the lines apparently for like 13 months, which is really awesome when you think about it. He was probably 5 or 6 inches taller and 30 or 40 pounds heavier than every other normal male in North Korea, and yet he was behind enemy lines for 13 months. He also captured a pirate North Korean junk during the Korean War, on which he found a couple $1 million worth of gold bullion. He was on special assignment to the CIA at the time, and he brought back this couple $1 million worth of gold bullion and turned it over to the CIA. And I'll never forget, his wife never forgave him for not shaving off a little piece. He had a lovely wife, British wife, Joe Kingston, and a gorgeous daughter, Leslie. Kingston was the kind of guy that you would jump on a helicopter with, or jump out of a helicopter with, or go in a battle with. You sort of implicitly gave him your life to hold for a while, and he gloried in it, to be honest. He was a real soldier. I mean, a soldier who got his hands dirty. He was a man's man, no question about it. So he's giving Joe these hyper masculine heroic characters
Yeah,
to
it's two of
populate the
them.
book with. Himma
And
and
and Kingston.
Kingston.
And we also remember his wife Jo from of course, the Valentine card from Hawaii. Problem in Making Connections by Joan Didion. And yeah.
What
So
what about Joan Didion?
Joe Kingston was the woman who gave McDonald a val they found the investigators found a Valentine card from her saying with lipstick on it saying
Yeah, is that
yeah.
revealed in the next chapter?
No, that was earlier on in the book. Um
Is that you guys are more thorough than I thought?
no, no. That it's never confirmed that they had a straight up affair, although he did go over to her house alone a lot apparently. It comes out later, but they
But
do
during
interview
you go.
no, what were you trying to say?
But during the interrogation, they present him with another card, and that's
Yeah, there's plenty of other women that were on the record as saying, "Yeah, I had sex with McDonald." Joe Kingston was not someone who ever admitted that, or her daughter.
got it.
They both had a lot of fraternizing with him. But anyway, so it's sort of a pattern with him, right? The ultimate masculine Superman, and then he ends up sort of worming his way into his wife's bed, almost certainly,
Maybe.
maybe allegedly. You can't defame a guy in prison for murder.
Or her. Can't
Or
defend
her.
her, yeah.
Well,
But
anyway,
but the, but I think his raw animal magnetism
yes. I
is
mean, he's so hot for this guy.
without any question. Yeah.
Yeah. And he really wants Joe to like render it in like amazing, beautiful prose.
And it was at this time when I told him I would like to serve in Vietnam that Colonel Kingston told me that he really liked my style, that I was his type of doc, and that if and when he went back to Vietnam, which he felt would be within a year, he was fully planning on taking me with him as his group surgeon, and of course I jumped at that. I remember leaving his second story, second floor office flushed with pride that this hardcore Green Beret, who later became a general, who ran the Green Berets, and much later, who was named the first commander of the new Rapid Deployment Force, had given me such high praise. And I,
Amazing that he was able to see all that in that moment. That this guy who was going to do all this stuff praised me. It's a little sort of a fractured, sort of cubist look on time, experience of time.
yeah, it's like, have you ever heard the album Blood on the Tracks?
Oh yeah, from the Bob Dylan singer. Yeah,
A
that
lot of
was
his songs kind of
yeah.
replicate
The
time.
time is all very. It's not linear.
So that was like McDonald doing a Tangled Up in Blue
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
kind of move. He loved Dylan.
All of a sudden, we're it's like it's Colonel Kingston's a fucking general. Like, and we always knew he would be. And I remember going home and telling Colette how pleased I was with the evaluation from Colonel Kingston, and she was enthralled, or actually not enthralled, but she was proud. Wow, so he had felt,
Why wasn't she enthralled?
yeah, wait, you dialed it back a little bit there. Her eyes always sparkled, this beautiful luminous brown when I got excited, especially if it was something that, I had done or accomplished. Sometimes I know she felt it was a little silly or boyish or mannish or whatever that such a thing would excite a grown man. But I remember coming back from this and her being, or appearing to be, very proud about the fact that Colonel Kingston found me such a good officer, and not anything about that he's taking me to Vietnam. Uh,
That was James's own
no, no, I'm
of
sorry. Yeah, it's really hard
emphasis
to pick the
emphasis added.
emphasis. Yeah, that's in brackets. Um, I remember another time. Oh, so it was section break. Section break.
Hmm.
I remember another time I took Colette to a retreat one Saturday morning early in our experience at Fort Bragg, like a Merton retreat.
Probably a
I
prayer
Oh yeah,
monastery.
prayerful fasting retreat. I had just been given my Green Beret that I could wear with thank God, with a training patch, but couldn't yet wear with full insignia because I hadn't finished my Green Beret training. But I was proud of being able to wear my Green Beret, I remember, and I went to this retreat in my Green Beret and jump boots and dress uniform, and it was one of those really impact moments that stand out, and I'll never forget it. And Colette never forgot it either. I don't know. Well, she was only alive for like another 2 months. I forgot it was like in late September or early October, and we went to this retreat, and we were standing in this clearing near the JFK Center for Special Warfare, having the review, and the flags, were held by the troops. And the troops were lined up smartly in their jump boots and green berets, and Colonel Kingston gave about a 5 or 6 minute speech. And it was one of those things that really did give you chills.
It's cinematic moment
Yeah.
after cinematic.
Yeah, he's really digging deep here.
Yeah.
Um,
I haven't heard a fucking thing about anything that like lit Colette up that had nothing to do
to do
with
with him. Yeah.
him. Like what
Well,
are like she always her eyes always
but
sparkled when she
all she
watched her
thought, yeah.
favorite show or read her favorite book or anything. No, when she looked at me
The
and
one thing I've
realized,
learned about her is that she liked Lord of the Flies, and that was because I got to read the letter that she wrote, not his interpretation of it, right? So
yeah, we've
she's
also
sort of like in his telling, she is just like this blank, this utterly vacant thing.
she's well, did you say vacant?
Yeah.
Okay, I would say it's more like her entire world is informed by her relation to him. So she's not totally vacant. She's super proud of him,
Of course. And she,
very impressed by him, very impressed by the Princeton club for sure.
oh, well, now we're going back to that. Yeah, she was always
She,
happy every time he won a sport or,
yeah,
um,
she's
but it just
weak.
seems when he's really straining. I think it's so phony how he's talking about, he's trying to describe her physically, and it's so, you tell that it's like really hard for him to like remember what she even looked like. It's like her, uh, brown eyes sparkled. Was that right? She had brown eyes?
They were luminous.
Yeah, that's right. Every time I talked, uh, here we go. Okay, it's getting more cinematic, Billy. There was, he's losing he's losing it. He, there was fog rolling in, and you could hardly see the end of the little parade grounds. And he used a couple of anecdotes to remind us that he had been other times, other places where the fog was rolling in, and he'd had good troops with him, and he'd lost most of those troops, and that some of those men now had medals of honors and silver, stars or whatever the hell they are, and that we were Green Berets, and we were to do our best. It was a time of a lot of upheaval on Fort Bragg, of course. The beginnings of the anti-war movement were beginning, and Jane Fonda was within months to descend on Fort Bragg. But Colonel Kingston gave this 6 or 7 minute talk that was really sort of chilling in its beauty and its patriotism, and I never forgot that. And Colette was there, and she was stunned by it also. And I remember when we went back to the house, that we both talked about it a little bit and how impressive a guy he was. And I repeated to her at that time some of the legends about Bob Kingston.
Oh boy.
Section break. Um, so it looks like the next I don't know what we're thinking here.
Yeah, we there's like six more pages.
Yeah.
But there's
So
one more section. Okay, this is a section where he's doing some really dope exercising.
yeah, but this is where he's gonna get called back on emergency leave because of Jay's. We're gonna get to hear how he perceives his brother's frailty and breakdown,
All
which is
right,
always.
well, we can do this section or we can pick up. Should we
I'm
do it?
not in a big hurry. I'm not in a big hurry to end. If you're, it's all up to you, man. I mean, I think we're crack-a-lacking here, but
All right, let's just keep
let's keep
going.
it.
See
Let's
how
just
the
get through
spirit
this so that way
moves.
that way we can get back to the
Are we like
interrogation next
are we
week.
like are we like Springsteen and Little Steven right now? Like end of the
Oh,
show.
I think they all want to go home. They all want to turn us off.
Yeah, yeah. Do you want to
It's
go
time
home?
to. It's time.
Do you want to
Nobody
go
wants to
home?
fucking go. Nobody wants to fucking go home.
What time is it?
The-
Fatal Vision podcast time.
Time. Boom. I wish we had some sound
Woo!
effects. We need some really cheap like stock music. Like have you ever heard that? Just like someone just plays some 3 seconds of instrumentals. Just like yeah, we gotta set the tone here a little bit more. But whatever. We'll get there.
All right, I'm gonna go. I
Yeah,
went on one.
please.
I went on one really exciting training exercise down on Vieques. Is that how you say that?
Good. You do I would have said Veeks.
An
So you're
island
doing
off
good.
Puerto Rico. There was Navy involvement, SEAL, and then in brackets, Joe says what the SEALs are. Involved. Thanks, Joe. Uh, SEAL involvement, submarine warfare, and experiment involvement in the Green Berets. We had large scenarios written up in which we were going to go into cities in Puerto Rico and set up these sort of dummy teams that would be watching students revolts, student fomented demonstrations and pick out the leaders and prepare scenarios on how they would be assassinated if it was in the best interest of allegedly their country and our country to do so. Let me think.
Oh, that doesn't sound really good, does it? That's not very noble.
Okay, so they're gonna go watch student fomented revolts in Puerto
Practice
Rico,
assassinating students.
and this is what I mean,
Sounds like
this is what month is this?
this is November. We're like 2 months away from the murders.
So this is November of
69.
69.
Yeah.
All right, so they're just practicing for Kent State, which will come in
Yeah.
May
Oh,
of
yeah, that's
1970.
right. Yeah, he's coming. Yeah.
This
Jesus
is
Christ. I'm glad you made that connection.
well,
That's really fucked up.
Yeah, it was May 4th,
Yeah.
1970.
Yeah.
There's a good Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young song about it.
No, that's my primary source on that. So
Yep.
now we know that McDonald was one of the participants.
Yeah, well, he would have loved to have been apparently.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what we were doing down in the Caribbean, a mixture of Green Beret and SEAL teams, and of course they were in tremendous competition with each other. The Green Berets thinking the SEALs were dead on land, and the SEALs thinking the Green Berets were pansies in the water. In fact, they were both good at both. They were both incredible sort of warrior type people. My job was chief medical officer for Kingston, and part of my duties, of course, involved checking out local prostitutes, of course,
I'm sure what a hardship on him.
in Puerto Rico. near our base. And that's where the famous episode occurred.
Oh, this is the content warning. I would,
Hold on a second. We're about to get a famous episode.
yeah, content warning.
All right. So I'm sweating my ass off.
Yeah.
All right, my shirt's off, everybody. Sorry.
Oh, look, yeah. So if you thought the content warning was already pretty high, now it's even higher.
All right. Where the famous episode occurred, where I was sitting at a bar with a master sergeant, and he picked up one of the girls in the bar. And then there was this horrendous battle in these paper thin walls, and the door was flying off, and the walls were smashing down. And it turned out that the girl he had picked up wasn't a girl at all, but a guy in drag. I'm a little bit scared of what he's gonna say, but
Yeah, it's gonna be brutal.
I'm just
Yeah.
gonna continue.
Yeah.
It was a female impersonator, and he had been making out with this person for like 10 minutes until he finally reached down between her legs and felt a hard on and went crazy. He almost killed this person. I had to help pull the sergeant off this guy. And then, of course, hush up the whole incident for the good of the army. But dutifully shared with Joe McGinnis.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to put it in the overall context of the book.
The sad thing, of course, well, yeah, because he's the hero of the story.
Yeah.
The sad thing, of course, that happened on that trip. So he just stops the story there about the.
Yeah. Well, there's an ellipsis. You left that out of Fatal Vision, didn't you?
Wait a second, Joe, that's not cool, man.
Yeah.
The
I want
sad
to.
thing, of course, like I'm sure Jeff said something really
I'm
progressive and
sure. Yeah. I'm
emancipated.
sure. Yeah. Well, he saved this person's life, and we'll just leave it there.
Yep. The sad thing, of course, that happened. Well, you know what? Good of Joe to leave it.
Yeah. He could. He's a lot he left out that would have made it look a lot worse.
The sad thing, of course, that happened on that trip was that I got called to go help Jay. Everything was hunky-dory, or so I thought. I was down being a Green Beret, and Colette was back at Fort Bragg, reasonably happily ensconced there, waiting for me, of course, beginning the schooling that she was so proud to get back to each time, and the kids were in good schools. Christy was in like a sort of basically a babysitting school, and Kimmy was, I believe, I guess, in kindergarten at the time. Yeah, she must have been in kindergarten. So we thought everything was fine, and I got this telegram, the TWX on the island of Vieques, that there was a family emergency. So I remember still being in battle fatigues and, jungle gear and getting onto an army transport. And Colette had been warned by the army that I was on my way, and she had a bag packed for me. And I changed into my dress army uniform. I was wearing, the Green Beret and paratrooper boots at this time and took, I believe, a commercial flight to JFK. And that's the time when this priest who was sitting next to me began telling me how much he admired men in uniform. And the next thing I know, he's got his hand on my thigh.
The amount of like gay stuff that he just volunteers in these tapes is so interesting.
Yeah, why did so the man in drag not needed at all for the story.
Yeah. And
Not a
then this
famous
is,
event, not
yeah,
a famous
no,
incident.
no, no. And
Okay.
then a priest tried to fuck me on the plane.
Okay. Anyway, to make a long story short, oh, he gave us an anyway.
Wow.
Okay.
That's nice. Well,
Next
you
thing
didn't really
I
want to go on with that story very much longer, probably.
next thing I know, he's got his hand on my thigh. Anyway,
That-
to make a long story short,
Did he just anyway sex with a priest? Because he didn't say like I was indignant or I fought it off or
punched him.
nothing. Yeah.
Anyway. To make a long story short, that's the time Jay flipped out. He had this apparently psychotic break. It turns out later he admitted to being on amphetamines for a period of weeks, if not months.
That's not good for anybody.
He had been tending bar in Greenwich Village and had just moved out of one apartment and was living with a merchant seaman, I believe. And apparently, the stress of tending bar, drinking too much, taking amphetamines to stay up all night and party, and then taking some LSD flipped him out. And he had this raging psychotic break, including breaking away from my mother, inadvertently, apparently knocking her down one time. Policemen finally getting a hold of him, and there being a struggle with the police, straitjacket, handcuffs, brought to the state mental hospital on Long Island and tried to dive through a window from the second story. This really horrendous episode. Finally sedated with Thorazine, and now several days later, I was arriving on emergency leave. I went to this mental hospital with my mom, this incredibly depressing place with the raging psychotics and their zombie-like Thorazine trances, and found my brother overweight, disheveled, with a psychotic thought process and was, absolutely stunned by the whole thing. I could understand taking some amphetamines.
God.
After all, they weren't so bad. Just stay up a little bit and party. Absolute genius, Joe, to just put this in here.
Yeah. An absolute genius of McDonald to volunteer that to just say that. There's no way he'll ever find my notes.
But I couldn't understand the LSD. But I just think when Joe put this in the book, he
Yeah.
must have felt so high. Like,
Yeah. I mean, it's so perfect. It's just this little throwaway line.
but I couldn't understand the LSD, and Jay, of course, assured me that it was given to him unknown to himself. All the rest of the people around him were the bad guys, and that if only I could get him out of the hospital, he would be fine. Well, he clearly wasn't fine. There's no question he had been sort of a fringe mafia player for a while. All the people he was dealing with were those fringe types that go on junkets to Las Vegas. They all have businesses that are legitimate in New York, but they all go to the track and they bet a lot of money and they gamble with bookies. And some of the businesses are not quite so legitimate, like Jerry the Drug Man, a guy who apparently buys up drug samples from drug salesmen and then wholesales them illegally to pharmacies. And Jay would run up gambling debts on some of these Las Vegas junkets, apparently, when he was taking amphetamines and feeling good, sort of in a manic phase. And he ended up at one time owing about $15,000. And my mom had to cough up when some people came to visit her. She called me in Fort Bragg asking me what to do. And I said, well, if you have the money, you're going to have to pay him because I didn't know what else to do. I certainly didn't want my mother's arms and legs broken, so there was a major amount of money that she took out of, I think, the life insurance policy from my dad's death that was used to pay off some loan sharks. We're almost at the section break. Should I just take it there? If
There's
you
a section break? Not in my book, but yeah, go ahead.
when you get down to there, well,
Oh, this is when he says then I had to go back to Fort Bragg. Oh, I
yeah,
do see it right here. Yep, you're right.
yeah.
Yeah, take it there.
So when he had this schizophrenic break, his main focus was on this mafia type personality. There was a lot of element of realism here, but when he had the psychotic break, of course, it became totally unreal, and The Godfather became sort of his Bible. That's in italics. He's talking about the film.
The book even.
The book. Oh, there was.
Yeah.
When did The Godfather film come out?
72.
Yeah,
So
so
this
he's talking
is
about the book. You're
just
right.
yeah, hooked on the book.
The Godfather became sort of his Bible. He would walk around holding it. If I had just read the next line, I would have.
Oh, sorry, I didn't need to get involved.
Believing that he was a character in the book or that the book had become real and that people were really out to get him. And I have to tell you that seeing someone in a state hospital is an incredibly awesome event. It's just shattering. The type of care that I know they get, and having gone through medical school and taken a period of training at an institute like this and knowing all the scare stories, seeing your own brother, who was always sort of an all-American hero, truly psychotic, was a very frightening thing. A tremendous, scary, vacant, desolate feeling about Jay and how he looked and the unbelievable turmoil that my mother was in from this. So I went in and checked out his apartment in New York, and that's when I went down to the bar he worked at and found a guy who may or may not have given him some drugs, and I thought he did. And he was the local supplier for some of the bartenders, and we had a little altercation. I sort of punched him out. Then I had to go back to Fort Bragg.
Superman. Uh,
This even this like emotional harrowing story about Jay has to end with
I just went out and I punched a guy.
definitely
Uh,
didn't know for sure that this was the dealer.
yeah, he probably didn't even do anything, but um, and also just a little aside about Jerry the drug man running some sort of racket with people who have drug samples and just harkening back to Shaw in the previous chapter, asking MacDonald why he has so many drugs in his house. And he's like, "Oh, I'm just fixing up tourniquets for camping trips." And he might have been running some kind of maybe he was hooking up Jerry the drug man, but it's the point is moot now with a murder charge. But section break. But the overriding feeling that immediately comes to mind about Fort Bragg was the sense of ease. Oh, so we're getting cozy and
Yep,
loving again.
yep.
Sense of ease that Colette and I finally had, and the new togetherness that really developed nicely. Colette was getting out of, a reasonably tough situation because she had been forced to live with my mom on Long Island and not really have control over her own life for a while. So there was the relief of getting together again and building our house again, and her being able to go back to school and having the cheap shopping available, the steady income. So we were becoming really reacquainted, and it was kind of fun because there was no pressure on me. It was low key. I could be around, play with the kids, and there weren't other contributing things. There were no other women. I
Whew.
wasn't dating any nurses. This 3 month period, I wasn't dating any nurses. I wasn't seeing people on the side. We were really recommitting ourselves to each other, and it was a nice feeling. I think emotionally, without any question, our relationship was getting stronger. I think the trust was building. I think some of the more obvious past escapades were beginning to fade. The little things that I did, the little affairs and the motel trips and stuff like that, that was nothing. It just meant absolutely nothing, except it was a guy away from home, and it didn't make any difference one way or the other. Colette had never been happier. I think the kids were growing by leaps and bounds and were extremely happy and essentially oblivious to any problems at all between us. What problems? You just said there weren't any. Uh, the fuck?
Well,
Or that Colette was sad, or that maybe just they didn't know about the motel trips and stuff like that.
well, he, he, but he's also incapable of any
He's
shame about.
zero. No, it's not repentant. No, not penitent. It's like they meant nothing. It was just a guy away from home. You would do the same. I know you would.
Yeah, who cares? So what?
Colette was the more I cheated, the happier Colette was. Um, and we both recommitted, because just to make sure it's a both sides type thing. So, okay, Joe, and he's like, so anyway, the army remembrances are of, for the first time in 5 years, a reasonably easy life and enough money coming in and new enjoyment with the kids. It was really a flowering of the fatherhood and childhood times. It was Kimmy developing and running and playing and reading and becoming bright and inquisitive, and us realizing that we had a super bright daughter, and Kristen just beginning to be a little tomboy and running around the neighborhood and protecting Kimmy and being a little more aggressive than Kimmy, and us realizing that we had a beauty on the way up. also bright and cheery and nonstop, and that we had a good future ahead. The kids were basically past, the real diaper stage. Christy still wore diapers, but it wasn't like she was a little infant anymore. She was beginning to grow and, talk and everything. Specifically, wow, really, it's really the lack of detail is quite striking compared to what the impression Colonel Kingston made. Specifically, each day he's trying here. He's trying really hard. Specifically, each day I remember like breakfast with the kids was so nice.
All right, to be okay.
Sorry, that was purely
There's not a
there's
question
no
mark.
question marks. I know. I hadn't had that really, the luxury of sitting and enjoying the kids at breakfast, and it was an enjoyment. It wasn't a chore. Sunday morning, especially, was a beautiful, beautiful time. We always had a late breakfast. Here comes the food. Very often, either Colette or I would get up and sneak out while the other one was sleeping and go down to the bakery and get some baked goods. We even try to do this in Chicago and Bergenfield, get bagels and lox or something like that, which wasn't very available at Fort Bragg. But we very often one of us would get up and do that and begin breakfast and then come back to bed when the kids got up and fool around for a while. Um, this was like a big thing. This was a reattachment of our entire family because we were having the time and I wasn't tired and I didn't have to rush off to work and I hadn't worked all night the night before and Colette was the most relaxed she'd ever been and we were making love with, I think, more abandon than we ever had before. Here we go. Lovemaking with Colette was always a love thing. It wasn't just getting laid or making out or getting fucked or whatever you want to say. It was always a much prettier thing than that. Colette, excuse me, Colette never like openly demanded love from me physically. She never sort of really grabbed me, or she never said, I want you to fuck me tonight, or something like that. We never, it was never that kind of a thing between us. It was not like the incredible physical sex that I had with Penny Wells. It was definitely lovemaking rather than pure sex. There's no question or comparison
But
at
he
all.
did have to note that with Penny, it was incredible, though.
Incredible physical sex. And that's just to bring up Penny at all in this section is absurd. So just for the record, it wasn't like Penny Wells, but I just gotta say I mean, I just want you to know that I had that experience and that was pretty special.
But you can see the book that Jeff is trying to
Yeah.
create.
The women of my life. There was Penny, there's Colette.
Yeah, yes. And in this section, he's setting it up so that the murder happens after the most blissful, enchanted period of time.
Right. I mean, we already know there's like so much bullshit in here. I mean, as far as affairs, and of course that he was working two and he was trying to get a third night shift moonlighting job. And he's saying he's not working at night at all, and he's just so relaxed,
And Colette is super happy, even though
so happy.
she's writing to her mom saying like, can I
I
come
want to
stay with
leave. Can
you?
I leave home?
Yeah.
Well, you want to take us home? The rest of this Harlequin type stuff. It's gonna get really mushy here.
Where did it leave off? Our lovemaking?
Our lovemaking.
Our lovemaking had a very gentle quality to it that was exciting to us both, I think. And it took us a long time for new things to happen, new positions, new techniques. I can't believe this.
That's so bad.
I'm gonna say a quick prayer in my head.
Yeah, please do. Take your time.
It always seemed that we were gentle and considerate to each other in our lovemaking and that each effort sufficed. We didn't have to do the next major position or change, or we didn't go through these things violently or passionately. We went through them sort of quietly. As a matter of fact, Colette was scared. I thought initially she was just a little vulnerable and a little naive, but it turned out that she had a real fear. You never really could pin down what it was from, whether it was sort of the unasked question. I can't even read this sentence. I'm gonna I'm gonna start that one over. Okay. You never really could pin down what it was from, whether it's sort of the unasked question. Had she made love with her high school boyfriend, Dean Chamberlain, and had not been successful, which was quite possible because, to be honest, Dean was a jerk as far as I was concerned. I always thought he was a nitwit. I can't fucking believe it.
Ugh,
We're back to Dean. We're back to
Dean.
Dean.
I don't like Dean. I
Dean is a
never liked
jerk
Dean.
and a
I
nit.
never, ever, I never liked Dean. And does that mean that like Dean was impotent and that traumatized Colette because it wasn't successful? Wouldn't surprise me. It's quite possible indeed. He was a jerk.
Or, or had the Purdue sophomore traumatized her?
I like how that guy doesn't have a name.
Or was it in fact that she was a virgin and had never really made love and was terrified of it and had, quote, successfully, unquote, held off both Dean and the Purdue sophomore, and I was the first man she ever slept with? I don't know. But it took many, 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 many months, in fact, years, before Colette was able to really lose her inhibitions in our lovemaking. It wasn't until I think maybe the middle years of medical school that she was really comfortable walking around naked in front of me, and she never really got over it totally. It was always a little bit of concern, and that, of course, was basically a turn on.
Oh, good. Thank God.
She was always feminine and a little bit naive and a little bit vulnerable, and it was a very exciting thing. I don't mean to sound the music and roll the drums, but at Fort Bragg, finally, with more time along with each other and me in certainly a better mood than I had been in for at least the prior year at Bergenfeld Field, and maybe even better than a lot of times in medical school, we could be more relaxed with each other and we made time for each other and took a lot of time. And each person's, the other person's satisfaction was important to us. And we were beginning to realize that the outside world, the civilian world, offered limitless opportunities to us, and that we would have this great, sort of dream come true without too much effort from here on in. We also came to the realization that there was a world out there that we could conquer. I'd be at Yale for my residency and later probably teaching at Yale and practicing surgery. And we'd have the farm, we'd have the horses, we'd have a boat. We had beautiful kids and a third on the way. And Colette was looking forward to the future with real glee and anticipation. And Colette and I were very much in love again.
Wow. Thank you, Jeff, for putting all that in there, for opening up so much to us. Um, what do we think of that being in the sort of as this sort of intermission between the tense but not directly confrontational interview of chapter 9 going into the inevitable Grebner confrontation and accusation coming in chapter 10. What is it doing here?
It is showing him describing the life he wants us to think he had with them.
Yeah. Yeah,
And then
certainly.
then there's the contrast with the reality he's being confronted with.
Right. Uh, and the J stuff.
Hmm.
What's that about?
Well, we have the, future knowledge.
Yeah.
So, but from a craft perspective, the experience Joe is trying to bring about, it's like there's something fucked up here, right? Like there's something like there's a darkness in this whole family situation. Like you saw it with the inhuman brutality of the father earlier on.
Yeah.
Now you're seeing Jay having gone into a psychotic rage, hopped up on amphetamines.
Hmm. And the Jeff sort of comes back and does nothing and then just returns to Fort Bragg. And it was just like, yeah, that was fucked up. He has no real insight into any of it.
Nope,
Like
nope, nope.
he he cannot have any empathy for Jay, other than it was really hard on me to see my brother, who I looked up to, be really fat and sick in the head. It was so traumatic.
Yeah. He was
It kind of reminds me
probably,
of when he comes home to like make comes home for his dad, like does his final chores for his dad, like doing carpentry stuff in the around Christmas in his dad's sick room. And it's like, yeah, we really sort of patched things up. Anyway, he died later.
yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is a pretty fucked up story. Like his mom is being threatened by mob people, and he's anywaying his way out of that. Seems
He anywayed his way out of that. He anywayed his
anyway.
way out of the priest touching his thigh.
Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Anyway, back to Fort Bragg, and there's also this guy who bought a lot of drug samples, which I had like an incredible amount of that I stole from the army. They're just gonna burn all of it, so that's stupid. I'll keep that. Um,
I mean, living in reality can be very painful. It requires a lot of spiritual effort and discipline. Flannery O'Connor's line about that like reality is something to which we're often returned at considerable cost. Like
yes.
it's painful to like come back into reality. You look at like a 12-step approach to addiction as a spiritual practice. Like, what's a big part of that? You review your life to examine the narratives that you've been living within and to see why you've been mistaken. And like, can you live in
Hmm.
reality? Can you live in the reality that you're just another bozo on the bus? Can you live with the reality that you've been harmful to other people and you need to try to be responsible moving forward? Um, in Jeff's case, I mean, you have the argument that he's a narcissist, so he's actually like clinically like he's incapable of that level of reflection. But you're seeing it. You're seeing this relentless self-justification.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so struck by his defensiveness around affairs, even to the point where this is his the person who's writing the book. He's given all access to his life, and you can't even think that it might not even look. You can't even comprehend that it wouldn't even. It's not going to look good to other people to hear you say
Well, right.
it
There's a
didn't mean anything. So
yeah.
he can't even he's so little awareness that he can't even imagine how bad he sounds saying that
Well, right,
it
right.
didn't hurt her. It didn't mean anything.
Well, yeah, like if you're writing a personal essay, say, I know
Hmm.
we have devoted writers who tune into this.
Yeah, a lot of them. Yeah.
Um, the worst thing you can do is to cast yourself as the blameless hero from beginning to end while you're taking shots at other people.
Yeah. Good point.
You earn the trust of the reader by demonstrating that you're aware of your failings and
Yes.
you're owning them. And at no point does he do that. He doesn't ever say like, "Yeah, I can see how fucked up it looks that I cheated on Colette 100 times. I can see that
Yeah.
I look like a bit of a dog, and I have profound regret for what I put her through." He's like, "It was no big deal. Come on, it was-"
Yeah. It was meaningless and it was all over, except for, Kingston's wife and maybe even his daughter.
Right.
They both sent me Valentines. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, and then I always not being an expert in psychiatric illness or whatever, but just the sort of the two co sides of a coin of like Jay's breakdown being so public and so obvious, and so and then Jeff is like even sicker, but it's so hidden from us in terms of functioning in society and getting by in social
Yeah.
situations. I always sort of, and just the timing of it too, that this would happen ba almost simultaneously to the murders is what a fucked up family, right? It's just hard. It's so sad.
Yeah. What was we when we were talking about something before this?
Um, well, just not, lack of insight, lack of,
Yeah.
well, so yeah, that's why it makes it a bad personal essay, for
Well,
one
yeah,
thing.
but I was thinking about the Rowan Williams essay actually. That Rowan Williams is a theologian that James and I read a lot, and he talks about like basically what do we do with all the what are the words he uses? Hatred, terror, guilt, panic, and suspicion that hurtles toward us, right? Do we face and absorb it, or do we pass it down? And that's the passing it down is a good description of like what is meant by sin. It's this like passed down dysfunction in our brokenness.
Mm,
And you can see it on display that in the father in the MacDonald family clearly just incredibly fucked up, incredibly broken, incredibly hateful, and just gave it to them.
yeah.
Which brings us
Uh,
back to something we've talked about on several episodes. The only way out of this cycle is, if for those who are theistically inclined, it's like a grace experience, but it's a taking of responsibility and living in the truth. And Jeff could have ended this any time.
yeah.
And the dysfunction that he's passed on well beyond February 1970 as a result of his inability to uh, accept, accept the truth about himself, about others, about life.
Yeah. Uh, if you could talk to him, it wouldn't even be worth it,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Confronting him wouldn't get you anywhere.
Well, I mean, he's an extreme example of things we see all the time. I mean, how many people, that C.S. Lewis book, The Great Divorce, and like and it's when people that are in heaven, they like go back to try to like convince their loved ones to like let go of what they need to let go of so they can join them in heaven.
Hmm.
There are these scenes where it's like, hey, like you gotta let go of your resentment at your cousin or whatever, and like the character will respond, yeah, but that guy, he did, you know what he did to me, and this and that, like the story becomes a kind of addiction.
Yes, and it becomes it has momentum and
Yeah.
time it grows larger and more potent as time goes on without, like you said, a moment of, if you want to be a moment of clarity,
Yeah.
a grace moment, hitting bottom, as the 12 steppers would call it,
Hmm.
where you can see the problem clearly for the first and only time. Um, and so
Yep. Yep.
I'm
The Rowan Williams phrase from earlier, but when we were off camera,
not fair. Yeah.
the our feverish efforts to justify ourselves.
Hmm. I can't imagine anything more apt to describe what Jeff's doing in these chapters than a feverish
Yep,
efforts of just
just feverish effort to justify himself.
talking about all these, he's talking about literal medals, and I didn't have this medal, but I was going to get this medal, and I was going to get this medal, and I was going to get this hat, but didn't have the right medal on it yet. And then when I
Yeah.
went to see, yeah, it's just,
Yeah,
you
it's how
know,
it's a way of dealing with pain.
yeah. And the worst imaginable fate for him was to be incarcerated. That's why and the interesting thing is, like, yeah, so he's just the standard pain that we all get of some sort, some fucked up trauma that we get, and that fuels our life and our dysfunction within legal society and civil society. And then there's a guy who commits a murder
Hmm.
and then wants to just keep going
Hmm.
and like it never happened.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and was convinced that the prison was a temporary. He was going to be. He just knew he was going to be getting out any day, any moment. And that's how he
Mhm.
got through the last, well, it's been 80 since 82. He's been in there nonstop.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. So,
You
um,
know, this thought just came to me in light of what we're discussing. Joe is cast as the traitor, right?
oh yeah, yeah. By
But
some, yes,
but
certainly.
Joe did a valuable spiritual service to Jeff, actually,
Certainly.
because he was honest with Jeff. Not in the letters, not in the whatever, but in this book, he did the right thing. It's like, Jeff, you can look at yourself.
Yeah. Here, it's all there. It's all there. And that's why it was rated as one of the worst experiences of Jeff's life is the ego death, the book.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, when you actually have to look at yourself and your life clearly.
yeah, and
It's
it's
hard to do.
exhaustive. Yeah.
It's hard to do when you haven't killed a 2-year-old.
Yeah. It's hard to do for anybody, anytime. So,
So
uh,
you have his feverish effort at self-justification in all these chapters. And also his entire fucking life is an exercise in that.
oh yeah. And then his life in prison has been the same. It's like Murtaugh is quoted as saying in the second to last chapter, it's never going to enter a pattern where he sits back in jail and lets the time roll on. He's always going to be maneuvering. He's got to. So there's how many legal. It's just it was crazy. He was able to really generate that feverish. What was it? Feverish what, Billy?
Pull it up. Our feverish efforts to justify ourselves.
Yeah, I mean that is Justify, Feverish. It's everything he did in all the fake appeals and Jimmy Britt and another super Helena Stokely's super confessions through her mom and all this stuff that gets fucking filed in actual courtrooms. It's just so embarrassing to think about him doing that
Hmm.
and like real actual judges reading that and just like voting no like every time
Hmm.
over and over and over and over and over. Um,
Send out my newsletter about 9/11.
yes, yeah, no, I'm so glad we thought that up. It's a long way from Dick Cavett, right? That's what Joe says when Jeff walks into the grand jury room. There's no applause. He was a long way from Dick Cavett. Um, well, I hope he's having a good night tonight out there in Cumberland and sleeping well, taking care of his body and everything, getting some workouts in.
I have one other Flannery O'Connor connection.
Oh, please
I
drop it in, drop it.
just finished reading another a book about her and these other writers, and basically what happens in any O'Connor story is that there's often a character who is not an evil person, but who um, is an unreflective person who spends most of their time assessing where they rank in some kind of hierarchy. So they're
Yeah.
always putting other people down and and justifying their place. And then there's usually some kind of, eruption of insight that comes as the result of an act of violence in O'Connor. It's like where the character that was so sure that they were so much better than everyone else has to wake up to the fact that they're not.
And
In
it's usually like the last thing they do before they're killed in a lot of the
a
stories.
lot of them, or in Revelation, Mrs. Turpin doesn't die.
She doesn't die.
She has the
Yeah.
vision, and she's in the pig pen, and she's looking up and saying, how am I a hog and me both? She's seeing herself as she actually is.
Yeah.
And then she's able to walk on, right? That she's not killed, but she gets the comeuppance though, which is the ego death.
That's right.
Right?
She gets
She sees the people walking into heaven. She has the vision that God gives her, and she sees all the people she looked down upon getting into the kingdom before her.
yeah, and then she sees how it really is.
Yeah, he sees how it really is. Yeah, if that happened to
Yeah.
Jeff, he would see all the like dental technicians from Patchogue,
Oh, and Dean, of course, would
Dean,
be
and all the wimps who didn't join the Green Beret
yeah,
would
those
hit him up.
400 fucking people that just did their stupid military service, like
Yeah,
not in the Green Beret.
yeah.
Um,
So just a thought I'm having.
oh, I love it, man. Yeah.
I like when the text brings out spiritual and emotional
Oh, that's why
insight.
we're here. That's why we're here.
But don't you feel that way? Like you're a Sopranos guy. Like when you
Oh
watch that
yeah.
show, don't you feel like confronted by your own dishonesty when you watch a show like that?
Yeah, of course. Well, where are we going with this? I mean, what does that mean about what are we being confronted with right now by Jeff's insanity? You
I
think
think we've
your own
already
failings?
I think we've gotten to it. I think it's
Yeah.
our people's refusal to live in reality and people's feverish effort to justify themselves. Yeah, yeah.
I'm sorry. I was just trying to look up this quote that from Flannery O'Connor that Dan Cornstein says in the closing argument of the civil trial, but I'm not having any luck with it right
That
now.
happened?
Yeah, yeah. That happened.
Where can we is that in the files from
Uh, yeah, you know what? Should we do like a live we're doing it live on the air, just like looking into the files.
yeah, we'll do it live. Fuck it.
Do it live. So you're just gonna hear us click a lot of clicking. You're gonna be hearing a lot of clicking, a lot of scrolling of the mouse.
Zony,
Fatal
Zony.
Vision Files, thanks to Matt. He's
We
got our
hope
back.
we hope you're out there, brother.
Oh, he's out there. He's out there. Here, closing argument for McGinnis.
Maybe I should talk while you look so
Oh
that
yeah, you just
people don't
totally
get
up
scared.
service search for Flannery. Here we go. You heard Joe twice quote an author on the stand to explain what it was that his process involved. When did you come to believe something? When did you think it? He quoted Flannery O'Connor, and this is what that author said. I write because I don't know what I think until I read what I write. It's the process of writing that crystallizes the thoughts, that weighs the arguments pro and con. So that was, yeah, that's what Dan Kornstein was, I guess, quoting Joe as quoting Flannery. So Joe must have said something, quoted that directly on the stand at some point. Interesting, you would just bring her up out of nowhere tonight, not knowing about this. Just so random. I wish I could talk to my dad about Flannery O'Connor, though, you know?
Well, that'd be
Must have.
fun.
Yeah. Wonder
Well,
what he thought about her.
did he ever read Philip Roth?
Did he ever read Philip Roth? I'm
Yeah.
sure he did. I'm sure he did.
Because we have that great Philip Roth clip when he's talking to David Remnick and he's
Yes.
like, I don't know anything when I'm
When
not.
I'm not writing, I don't know anything. Which is, he would have probably quoted that one if it had been in the linear timeline. But
Yeah, that
he had
interview
to,
came later.
yeah. So, well, that's pretty neat.
It's very neat.
As Jeff would say, I felt neat just being all hot in my uniform and having this priest was willing to throw away his vows and everything just for a shot at me.
Can't blame him.
Yeah, it's, it's his favorite thing. Just, Flannery O'Connor. All right, well that's about it for me. I
All
mean,
right. All right. We can
we
wrap.
can, yeah. I mean, I don't want it to be anticlimactic, but I'm not, if I'll try to dig up more stuff about Flannery O'Connor that my dad might have ever said to me. But we'll, you know, yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyways, thanks for sticking it out with us. We got through a huge chapter. I think this might be the longest episode we've ever put on tape.
And honestly, I feel like we've only just begun.
Yeah, it's fucking awesome.
Yeah, I could keep going. This is the part of the show where like Bruce and the band take a bow and he's gonna
Mm-hmm.
come out and do one more acoustic song.
Yeah, that's right. To bum everybody out.
Yeah. He would sing I'll see you in my dreams.
Hey, that sounds good. So everybody, we'll see you all there tonight. And
Everybody in the group.
don't forget to keep reading us, keep writing about the case, keep thinking about the case, keep reading Fatal Vision.
Also, if you're liking it, if you're liking hearing us talk about it, hit us with another review.
Like, subscribe, review, comment.
We get real excited when we see that stuff. It keeps us going.
Yeah,
Um,
any word of praise or support that you can muster and throughout your given day would just mean the world to us. We are very, 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 very frail beings that need lots of support
very
just to
needy,
keep going.
very confused, very scared.
Yeah.
Um, and we know what you're thinking. Uh, that you'll you won't have the benefit of contact with the two of us who do this podcast. God will determine that.
Yes. Beautiful.
God will determine that. Um, but you will surely meet us someday as we trudge this road of the Fatal Vision podcast.
Yes, trudge the happy road
May God bless you and keep
and
you.
keep you until then.